Now, did any one of you get a chance to look up the parenthesis part we discussed? I believe it was more like a kind of uh, um, a topic or a chapter that you saw in the book, or which I gave you a reference for the page number. I'm not sure if you had the opportunity to look at that example.
I did.
Okay, and that's Christine, is it? Or
Sansi, right? It's Sansi,
Pat?
right?
Okay. Sansere, so what did you find there? Did you um, have any questions, or did you think that it was a good example that you thought was explaining everything about using parentheses?
I thought you said we were talking. That's for the page 96. You told me where we were doing like the veggies and the versus the fruit, or the veggies plus the fruit.
Right,
Correct?
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I don't know. I did a search on each one of them, and I just kind of looked at the different amount of results that were coming in, and I
Mhm.
don't know what I did with my post-it, but I believe it was the one with the, I think it was D. C and D came back with the, or yeah, came back with the best results. I can't remember which two was because I don't even have my post-it in front of me, but I don't know. It went pretty good to me. I liked it doing the different searches, seeing what results came up and how much. But I also liked, no, it wasn't that. It was with the veggies and the fruit. When you say the veggies and the fruit and put those in the quotes, uh, those got the best results to me.
Right. The only thing that get explained really in depth and with a lot of examples is um, how you're going to use or compare the groups of items or groups of search terms that can be separated or compared with when you put them on either side of the OR operator. The only caveat that is explained particularly in this example is that you will not be able to work with the parenthesis in case you wanted to make it into separate groups to be compared. So we cannot group any search word or two terms using parentheses, which generally and logically from the algebraic perspective is an enclosure that encapsulates the idea or the search terms which needs to be resolved inside of the parenthesis. So that is what is assumed with a lot of people still using parentheses, but that actually does not function or is not considered by the search for some reason. However, uh, parenthesis is acknowledged as something that the Bing search engine or the Explorer uses quite effectively. So this is what I'm trying to explain to you, that as far as Google search is concerned, you will find that it is not considering the parentheses. But Bing does, and if you're using IE, you will find that it works really well. So occasionally I would just switch my browser only when I have to do my search with parentheses or compare groups. But because I use Chrome more frequently, I try to separate each group um, as a separate set of search query. And I don't use OR to compare groups on both sides. Anyway, the idea is not to create any confusion, but for you to know that when you're using the Chrome browser, you don't really need to use parentheses. And you have to work around the idea that because parentheses don't work, the OR does. And OR is going to compare everything as I explained to you before on both sides and start making different combinations. So that is just not only an idea, but also an effective search. You could say um, it is more like a restraint that does not work. That's all. So we are not going to use parentheses ever in our search queries moving forward. Okay. A minus sign is something that will be used quite frequently, and it's perhaps the only operator that will help us to eliminate certain search terms or get rid of certain domain names from bringing pages in your SERPs. So minus is what we will figure out first, how to use it effectively, and second is its effectiveness in certain situations. So as usual, we are going to use examples. We have a few examples that we can start with. Let's take a simpler one. In fact, I have something which I found, perhaps that would be a good start. There is a situation which talks about getting rid of an effect of false positive. False positive can be explained in just a moment. As soon as I pull that out of here, where is my minus? I'm sorry, because I've been using so many slides from different places, I'm not able to put them together for you yet. But I promise it's going to get done by the end of this week, because that's when I'm planning to, finish up the advanced and the basic operators, and I would know which slides to put in which sequence. So that would mean till the end of this week. Where is it? Where is my query? Here is the one. So let's get this running, this slide that I'm particularly interested in explaining. A false positive is a situation where you mean something in the sense of how you would think the search engine would interpret it, which also means that linguistically it is correct, or the same phrase is explaining something that can also be explained in two different ways, or the same sentence or the same phrase could mean two different things. So that creates a confusion for the search engine. One of the reasons that a false positive happens is shown here in this example. And if you look at it carefully, the search query says John Smith, resume, and then it is asking the search to eliminate the word jobs, the word sample, the plurality of sample, which is samples, and then the word template needs to be also not included in return results. Now, all these minuses that we put here right next to the search term is explained even better when I copy it and paste it here and show you that the convention of writing the minus signs, or where you're going to put the minus signs, is important. First of all, the representation of a Boolean that replaces a minus sign, or where something in Boolean gets replaced by a minus sign, is the word NOT. Okay, so if I put after the word resume the word NOT in capital letters, I am giving it a Boolean restrictor, which is really going to get rid of the word that falls on the right hand of it. It's not going to have any impact on the word resume. It's only going to remove the word jobs. In other words, it is also going to remove or replace rather the word, the notation of a minus sign. So let's suppose if I write NOT and I replace all the minuses with NOT. Notice how NOT is placed, and where the gaps are to be considered as somewhat different from where we place the minus sign. So if it is NOT you're using and anything on the right hand side is to be eliminated. So every single word which is job, sample, samples and template is going to work with NOT. But NOT can be removed by a minus sign. However, the placement of a minus sign cannot be exactly at the same location as we have placed NOT, which means the gaps or a single character space between the words on either side are no longer supposed to have a gap of a single character. Rather, you would have to eliminate and remove that gap so that no gap is left between the minus sign and the word jobs. Similarly, no gaps between the minus sign and the word sample. And again, the same thing. I prefer using a minus sign versus NOT as a practice. I don't have a justification because it is mentioned in Google search books that it works exactly the same, and basically it remains to be an exact replacement of NOT with a minus sign. Yet I feel comfortable using minus as a practice. I found it to be more effective, or you could say that it brings less of a lot less errors in the return results. It's your choice, but every time you're going to look at how we have used the search examples with NOT, you will see that NOT at every instance is replaced by a minus sign. So let's suppose that this is how you're going to write the minuses. If I remove the minus from here, then the minus sign that is right next to the word jobs may also include these two words as if they're together. It just depends on how the search would think of these two, either as single keywords or as two words put together in a search term, search phrase. So it becomes job sample, So this is another example that you must also remember, that any words that you're going to remove, you put minus sign. Similarly, if you want to make sure that the search engine makes sure that these two words are a single search term put together within the quotations as jobs sample, and you put a minus sign just before where you start the quotes open, you are asking the search to find results that do not contain the words job sample together. Okay. It's not difficult to understand how the quotation marks would impact or place these two as a single search term not to be included in results. Now, coming back to the false positive situation that we are trying to explain. Now here, when we look at, let's say, query 1, the search result is bringing me resumes of John Smith. Now, John Smith is creating confusion in the sense that it is not able to understand whether I'm looking to find resume of John Smith, or John Smith is, a kind of a name that sort of replaces John Doe, and John Doe is used in samples, in templates or resume samples that are out there. And I don't want any of those samples. I don't want any websites that are coming from, job portals like Indeed.com or Simply Hired, things like that. Rather, my objective is to find a resume of John Smith a real person who's particularly, when you know of a person and you know the name and you are getting kind of results which are not required or which should eliminate or should not include or should not come from a sources like jobs portal or sample or samples as included in resume examples or any of the templates. So I had to remove that false positive indicator. Otherwise, it would not have enough reason to, or the search might think of it, as I mentioned, like you're looking for samples of resumes. On the other hand, with the minus signs, I can also add certain websites or domain names that should not be included as well. So let's suppose I say simply hired.com. This has become one search term literally, and it is the text part we are talking about. So simply hired.com, which could be anywhere in the description or URL or anywhere on the content pages, will not be returned or will not be considered in search results. So I wrote simply hired.com to be excluded from my search results. Similarly, if I feel that I want another website like let's say monster.com, I can put another minus sign. But there is a limit to how much of words or how much of a characters you can place in your search box. Generally, it is advised that do not put more than 168 characters, or not to put more than, say 60 words in a single search query. That is going to create another sort of a situation or a scenario which will start to bring erratic results, and you will be confused not knowing how many of the characters you should have put. Or let's suppose, to explain it another way, if this one long search query, assuming for now, has got the limitation that stops or that fills up the maximum character size within the highlighted portion that I'm just showing you right now as an assumption. I don't want to put so many of the characters. So let's assume that this is as much as you're allowed to place in a single search query in terms of character notations, whatever it may be. And everything else that follows after, which in this case, let's say starting from ply hired.com is not to be included because it's exceeded the size, then the search would ignore everything from this minus sign, including simply hired, the entire part, and also where I've put monster.com, even this term. So all of it that is going to exceed the size or the maximum length of such query will be excluded. And you will get incorrect results. How many of these or what could be the maximum length keeps changing, or you could say that the search engine keeps, changing the maximum sizes of everything, even description, even URLs, and they don't announce it. So what we do is we sort of, through trial and error, we figure out what could be the maximum size. There is in the book there is information on the maximum sizes of what can be shown or what is considered in search, and I am going to find that slide for you just so that I know that you can look it up as well, and I see if it exists here or not. Otherwise we'll have to look for it in the book, but for sure it is somewhere, and that's going to tell us the maximum size or length of the terms you can place. So let me quickly see if I can do that. If not, then I'll give it to you later. if it is not easily discovered. Somewhere in the HTML, here it is, I think. So if you look at this slide, you would see now this is describing the maximum sizes based on our, I guess I'm not sure if it is the latest one, but it's not a very old information. So in the title portion, URL length, not all web pages, some of the buttons, no limit on word counts. Now this is the one that you have to look at. It says Google search limits to 32 words to a search query. Each word is also limited to 128 characters. So I guess this is the newest one. So you don't want to exceed 128 characters. Whenever you're using a minus sign or even OR operator, if you, with a minus sign, are trying to eliminate false positive or irrelevant words, sometimes you get carried away and you keep putting minus signs to get rid of those terms, which eventually add up and exceeds the maximum size. So have to be mindful when we are writing those queries, especially with minus signs. Similarly with OR, as we try to expand more and more, we need to, hold back a little bit to first check how much of the words or characters I have used, if it has not exceeded 128 characters. Otherwise, without Google letting you know where you made a mistake, it's not like it's going to give you error messages. So it might not bring you the correct results and you won't know what the problem is. One thing you look at is the number of characters. Where did I? Here it is. How about we start with the advanced search, and let me start by explaining the structure of advanced search operators. Now, advanced search operators has got a peculiar or a very typical structure of its own, like this one. This is getting you introduced to the advanced search operators. And we have actually, these are all the operators we'll be working with. There are a few that are depreciated or on their way to get depreciated, or you could say certain advanced operators that you find while you're Googling for advanced search online. You would still be able to see some of these ones that are actually depreciated long time ago, but people, or whoever the author is, they mislead you into believing that those operators work, but they don't work, or they're flaky. So I'm not going to include those ones in this chart or in this slide. These are about all the correct ones, the ones that actually work. And there are certain operators that got depreciated. I will introduce you to them so that you would know, even if you see them as mentioned somewhere, you don't want to use it, just for your recognizing those depreciated operators. I will tell you what those are as well. Okay. So in advanced search, we are now looking at this format in which I have placed them, or you could say that these bullets with different colors are indicating, giving meaning to how I have organized it. In the advanced search, the operators can be classified as those that work for the type of information that gets fetched and is presented as snippets, like the title, like the description and the URL. So I have actually organized it as if it belongs to or these sets of operators, which is the other bullet points in brown color saying title, description, and URL falls under the main heading of snippets. Similarly, in the main heading of format, it only is saying that the operator known as file type is going to look for a certain type of file format when you're searching. Source needs to be discovered. At times you need to find the competitors or someone who has a similar site or is competing in the same market or same industry or offering same products and services. We could find that source. We just calling it source in green color. So that can be discovered with the related and the colon sign. Source is another operator that looks for the origin of where the first appearance or upload of that information is coming from, because the sources can be duplicated, it can be borrowed, it can be used to assume or show that it is actually originally coming from a certain type or certain source itself, but originally that is not where it got published in the first place. So we are going to discover it through the operator source and the colon sign. Link is another operator with the colon sign, and it has a huge utility which supports scraping through all the URLs that has a certain type of domain or certain words are mentioned in those links. So in case you just want the search to crawl into the pages that contain those words or that domain coming from different content pages, it's going to be captured using link and a colon sign. So that we are going to discover under the heading of source. Domains is a restrictor which is strictly going to ensure that certain domains are bringing or are considered for bringing for collecting pages that are attached to that particular domain. So we are going to use a site with the colon sign. That's going to be under domain. Date range is very important advanced operator, and it has now replaced something which used to be date range with the colon sign. Date range with the colon sign has certain it has certain restraints, or it had the complexity which was creating confusion not only for search engine, but while some people were using it, they were finding results that don't precisely match. And the reason was that slowly Google was depreciating that and it was introducing another date range operator. Range obviously means that it is a parameter set. It can be a range of numbers, it can be a range of dates. All those ranges that needs to be specified requires for us to use before colon and after colon. So let's not even worry about date range. It's a typical question I used to get from students because they still use date range and used to work. It was not consistently as accurate, but the question always brought to my attention the fact that date range works, so why have we got to deal with before and after? Anyway, not at not something to discuss right away. When we get to date ranges, we'll work with before, after, and also tell you where the date range operator is causing issues. Cache, image size. Now, cache and image size is not as important. Cache is almost redundant in the sense that we would just look at the snapshot of some of the examples, but it is not as effective as it used to be because utility of it is diminished. and I'll explain that as well. Image search, image size, I mean, we can do it very easily by using the image utility. So kind of image size is also not as important or is not as effective because we have the alternative. But everything else that is mentioned, we have talked about around, we've talked about aesthetics. So right now I'm going to start with file format first. And even before I do that, let's try to understand what colon means and what these words mean for the operator to function. So anything that is before the colon sign has a deep meaning and an understanding which is hard-coded and programmed in the textual databases. So to ask a question, why file type, why X, why not anything else, is not as relevant of a question because it is a strict, absolute word that has to be spelled precisely as suggested, and the colon sign has to be something that needs to be put for it to appear as an executable advanced operator. Otherwise, if you don't put the colon sign, or if you leave a gap between a colon sign, let's say the last character E, would separate literally the word from the colon sign. So no gaps. And leaving a gap simply means file type is now treated as a word and not that it's going to work as an operator. All right, so I'm going to start with the file. Well, basically, let's look at the structure of the query. This understanding is important. You'll discover why. You would need this understanding, which I'm about to explain, when certain type of advanced operators don't function properly, and in cases where they are not supporting certain type of files or formats, or specific type of operator is not available totally or is missing, and you need to find an alternative to work for you, except that in that case only the colon sign will be effective and you don't necessarily need to use the word. So that's just going to be a concept we will discuss, and then later look at some of the examples of how we can find certain type of file formats that otherwise the file type colon will not support. And for that reason, we might not use the word file type, but instead play with colon sign alone. Okay, so that's just in perspective, but let's look at how it is supposed to be explained as an kind of executable search term. Let me break this up a little bit. Now, I'm not going to play this slide because I may want to add few things to this slide. Now, when we type things like file type colon and a PDF, one thing that you have to be mindful about is that certain type of operator has to work with the declared value, we call it. Excuse me, I'll have to put it in the notepad for your for better explaining what I'm talking about. I'm going to borrow this query. So let's suppose file type with the colon sign is one way of how the operator is going to function for discovering the type of file format. So if I want this operator to work, I want to make sure that what I declare after the colon sign is going to match or is going to exactly fit into the description, definition, and its function that relates to the file type with the colon sign. In other words, the word PDF that I have declared after the colon sign, I'm calling it declared because it is parsed, or it is a kind of information which has to have some meaning for the operator to function as in file type. And that meaning or the declared object of PDF only signifies that it has to be a file format. It can be, let's say, PPT, PowerPoint, it can be XLSS, or any file formats that you're trying to discover. And if you write something which is incorrect here, or let's say you want to type a word here, PDF file like this, okay, together, it's not going to work. Or if you put something again that is a word, you want to find a file type, MPEG, it will also not work. Why? Because MPEG format is not supported with the operator file type and a colon. So these important concepts or understanding of what will work and how it's going to work is important when you're using file type. Similarly, if I'm using something called in title, not worrying about what in title means, but from the point of view of understanding the structure of the use of operators and what is declared and what is considered as acceptable in the field of placing something after the colon sign. So let's suppose that this is an underline, fill in the blank. You can only place over here the text or term which is going to be considered as a textual word or a search phrase. So if I say in title a CIRS certification, this is treated as a text, or all these words that's going to come after colon sign are treated as text. So this has to be text, this has to be file format, and nothing else. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Similarly, if I'd used another operator, let's suppose these are examples, not explaining what site means, but let's suppose I use the operator site colon. What the operator would demand or require for it to be executable is that you put a domain with the extension like .com or whatever it may be, .edu, if in my case it is AOFIRS .org. This is how it's going to work. So it has to be a domain name. Domain name means that it has to have this extension for it to be recognized, for it to be executable. So if I did not put .org, it's not going to match or have any relationship or will negate or nullify the effect of site colon. So whatever you declare, parse, or place after the colon as an object can be a domain name, can be text or file format, except that you want to be sure that with the names given to individual advanced operators, you are following the convention and understanding that you are, when whatever you put, let's say after in title colon, will be treated as text. So if I put MPEG here as a file format, it is considered text and not a file format. Okay. So it's going to look for it as a word and not as the file format itself. Next, the structure. The structure says, or the naming or the technical name that is given to what is included as a word coming right before the colon sign. This word is called property name, or it is something which is recognized in the textual database of significance in making it an executable search query when you put the word file type and the colon sign after it. But if you leave a gap, it's not going to work. And I think I mentioned that it does not have to be in capital letters. So if you type file type or anything that is in advanced as an advanced operator, capital letter or small caps does not matter. Um, so this part is called the property name. The colon is called property operator or something that makes it executable, separating it from just being treated as a word, and for it to become the operator that is functional or a command that is telling the search to execute it as a process, you need to put the colon sign. So colon is described as a property operator, and anything that comes after the colon sign, we call it property value or object or something that is declared. Declared means it is noted or is identified with the executable command in terms of finding the file type. Okay, so this is what we call the value, property value. I'll maybe I'll just explain it from the slide. This slide is giving you an idea of how multiple advanced operator can function in a single search query. This is the beauty of it, like different types of functions for which each of these advanced operators are meant to be used for can be interoperable, or they can be used together to basically, it's more like a command, or it is a logic that you can actually place, give to play with those words, or for the query to execute as as a more precision or a precision query. You would be using more than one operators along with the booleans. But here we are exclusively talking about using multiple advanced operator. In this example, it is showing, let me see if I can explain it in the notepad. So I've got a query here that says site irs.gov, then I've got form and 40 file type. So this is the query. See, literally, these are two queries or two operators that could function independently and also function together. So if you ask me to split this into two, just to make it appear as if both of these can also work separate from each other, I'm going to first split it as site irs.gov, asking the site to restrict my search to the domain which is from irs.gov. I am looking for form 1040. All right, this is good enough. And supposing I wrote as a duplicate, as going further with the second set of query, I can also write form 1040 and say file type PDF download. So literally, these are two queries. If you split them, you can actually split them into two different queries using the word. So when we are using advanced operator, we can combine these two separate queries into one. Okay. And if we break it into two, you could see that it is duplicating. It has got like a running of the same wordings the second time. So the idea with advanced operator is to make it available for you to write one long query or one query and eliminate any duplications, make it more efficient for you to perform search in one go. So this is where the one is basically combining 1.1 and 1.2. And this happens only when you're using the advanced operators. I'm going to use the book here because I have few good examples with file types, and file types is explained in more detail in the book than in slides. So let me get to the I'm into page 110 onwards. File type. Let's try to run some of these queries using the file type and starting with the file type first. Now, in file types, when you type something that looks like this, which means, and I'm going to run this one, but let's just show you first. Let's suppose this is the query, and I want to find a file type that is bringing me the PDF formats. Remember that the search engine, while you're using file type in Google especially, you would see that certain file types are not supported by running the file type operator. There is a list which is more important than anything else, and that I wanted to show you. The type of file formats that the search engine is not going to find for you. The ones that are searchable or which is index separated from the content, it's extracted and organized so it is really available for you to search from using file type. Those are listed here. The common ones that we deal with is XLS, mostly Microsoft files, XLS, PPTs, doc files. Right? But at the same time, there are other files which are very useful, but you probably never knew about them. For instance, files from getting city maps that you can print out, certain archived or earlier dated files that are captured and archived into indexes of the search engine that you can search for are called KML, .kml or KMZ. Similarly, other file formats, and by the way, what you do get when you are searching usually as web pages are in the HTML format already. So never mind HTML, it is by default bringing HTML. I would never put file type :HTML. That doesn't even make sense. But GPX is another type of file format. Ones that you want to be certain that are available, that you can search for exclusively, especially if you're trying to find source codes, trying to download programs, that is raw program, which can be reused or you can build on it. You can search with .cs, .java, .pl, and all of those. However, with the examples we are going to follow and what we focus on are the Microsoft Office suite, so XLS, PowerPoints, Doc, and PDFs. That's where we're going to be. PDF particularly. Okay. And certain type of files that you thought, or probably even for me, it was a surprise, that cannot be found through regular search using the file type operator are the image files, the kind of image files like PNGs, like GIFs, JPEGs, common formats. You won't be able to query them using file type with the colon sign. Strangely, it is not supported by the file type colon. MOV files, multimedia files, you won't be able to search them with the file type colon. So that you have to be mindful about. I'm copying, in fact, now the rules of using file type operator. If you are to, and you just look at where my cursor is and where I'm pointing to, so that you can follow exactly the example I need you to pay attention to. The first one here are the type of, it's just few examples that's going to show you how or what you need not do, or you should be careful. When you're using file type, you are not going to put the word Adobe. It has to be precisely the format. So it can only work with the word PDF without leaving a gap after the colon sign. So PDF has to be touching and hugging the colon sign for it to be working. You cannot put Adobe here. That's just going to kill the query altogether. Second thing, when you're writing file type, you don't want to put .pdf or .xls or whatever other formats you need to get. Don't include the dot. Okay. Third thing is to avoid putting the file types that are not discovered by using file type colon. Okay. Things like JPEG, as I mentioned, PNG. And by the way, don't think of the discovery of those files which otherwise cannot work with file types, that they are not found by creating or building up a query, because we have a way around it, which means that we can use a symbol of a sort that bypasses the need for the file type with the colon to actually bring that result for you. No dependencies on that, and we'll find out the way around when I'm going to start to work with the colon sign and leave out the entire word file type, which means I am going to now use the colon as a symbol and ignore the word file type. This is an exception, more like something that is not supported or is not recommended by Google, but it is a workaround. As I said, workaround means it's not something which is provided as an operator. Okay. So let's carry on with how we can use file type. Now, the way in which I'm going to write the query, let's take this one for example. If I wrote in the query, I wrote or put the term which needs to be discovered within the file type PDF, and this, by the way, is a correct search, so nothing incorrect about it. The way it's written is absolutely accurate. The question might be that if I'm using the advanced operator, any type of advanced operator, now you have to start connecting it with what is going to follow. Some of the behavior of these operators are typical and consistent with all other advanced operators. So from that point of view, I'd say that you have to think of it in a larger perspective. So what the larger perspective means, that anytime you have an advanced operator that is placed in the search query, it can be followed by the search term and bring the same results as it would otherwise if you just change the position of the word search certification and placed it after the query file type PDF, after the term itself, and the, I'm sorry, before the term CIRS certification, as I've shown over here. So you will get almost the same results. So it does not matter if you put the term before or after the operator. That's just in a single instance. When you've got multiple operators, there could be a little variations. It just depends, and we will use it where we need to shuffle the terms or place them at a different spot, and that is going to be by planned query that we put together, where we would be mindful and careful about on which location we are going to put the search term. But when you're using a single search operator, it does not matter. So between this one and this one, placement of CIRS certification before and after will not give you different results. And where you have to put more than one term for search, you can place it this way, which is also the same as placing these two terms after the file type and the PDF. The entire operator would not affect or will not be affected by the placement of these two terms, semantic search and Elasticsearch, if you put them after. So if I put even if I put one of these terms after the file type PDF and leave the Elasticsearch as is, it would still not make any difference. Like in this situation, it's going to look at it heuristically or from the perspective of everything happening together, as if there is no sequence or definite sequence maintained. So that's where, some of the questions that come in the class, I'm assuming and covering those by explaining some examples. After we get done with this, we are going to run actual search queries and create certain variations of it. Look at some of the results, observe where it worked and where it did not. Interesting things we'll be discovering with the file type. But even before I do that, let me show you something interesting on finding the files which otherwise are not supported by file type. So suppose, let's take an example of looking for images. So if I had used, and I remember the example, I think it was, say, white horse. And I'm looking for an image file. So let's suppose the file type that I've used, I am going to put here, let's say JPEG. Okay, and I know that we know that JPEG is not supported by the operator. So I'm going to run this and see what it's going to bring. Basically nothing, literally. This is being pulled from another algorithm, all these pictures, but people also search for, so that's where it's coming from. It's not giving me the results which I require because JPEG is not supported. Now instead, I'm going to be more creative and used just the, let me run it in this browser. I'm just going to use one browser. Let me continue with this browser. I am going to get rid of the word file type, and after the word white horse, I will just try to make it work or force it to work by only inserting the colon sign. Now I wanted to discover JPEG files, and the file type is not giving me the results. So the way around it is just to use the colon sign. See how I've put it after the word horse, literally white horse colon, and then without any gap, the word JPEG for the file format. Now it is going to give me all the JPEGs. Okay, and tons of results are going to show up. So this is another way of forcing the search to think of colon first of all as executable, and it has a meaning for the textual database to have some understanding of what the colon sign is indicating. Colon sign is saying execute. execute and with reference to what is on the left of it and what is on the right of it. So that is without getting deep into the logic of why it accepts colon. It is one of the programming notations. So we are now forcing it to execute by understanding colon as something that it has to act upon. And I use colon sign to do it. Similarly, I can also give you another example, which is a variation of how I can also apply file type and put PDF and say I'm looking for form 1099. Okay. It's going to give me a list of PDF files. Whenever I'm using file type with the colon and PDF, it is bringing results that has an icon on the top where you look at the snippets carefully. It says PDF, and what that icon says is that it is downloadable PDF, and nothing else. It's just downloadable, so it's going to default directly onto the PDFs. And this is how people normally use the file type. Easy to use, appears very convenient. But let's suppose I look at the results, you would find invariably all of these are downloadable PDFs. All of these are downloadable PDFs. Now, what am I missing here? What are some of the PDFs that are not discovered with the file type operator? What could those be? Remember how some of the PDFs are listed on the content pages where they are not directly downloadable, but they are mentioned. There is a mention of PDF files on those content pages. And we also want to discover those and get more results so that it not only looks for downloadable PDFs, but also looks at the listed PDFs, which requires further navigation, or it is not indexed directly as a downloadable PDF. So we can expand this or make it more effective by making a little bit of a change on how we write this query. So this is how we wrote it first. And now I'm going to show you another way of writing something that's going to bring me everything on PDF with those wordings in it. What I would do, watch carefully. I have changed the placement of the form 1099, and right after 1099, I'm going to put a colon sign, and here I'm going to put the file format PDF. What am I asking search to do now? First of all, with the colon sign, I'm saying to bring something as an object which has to do with the PDF and bring it with reference to this context or this word form 1099. And let's see what it's going to get us. It's getting us PDFs, but also see this one is not downloadable PDF. This one is also not downloadable PDF. The ones that don't have that icon, like this one in these snippets, means that they are listed somewhere. So the link is going to take me to the page which has a listed PDFs where I would be able to find them somewhere on those pages returned that has a mention of the word form 1099, and it is the PDF that I can click on to get to those files which otherwise are not separated at the time of indexing as the downloadable indexed PDFs. So this is how I've changed it a little bit. Let me separate it just to show you the two instances. And look at the number of the results. Here I discovered more on PDFs with 5,480,000 results versus 230,000 results. So these some of the tricks or the workarounds or some of the more creative ways in which you can use certain components of the operator itself, like the colon sign, is displayed as one of the methods that would give you that flexibility. Now notice how we have written it in two different shapes and forms. I have not used the entire file type as a word with the colon, or not used it as an operator here. Just use the colon sign. This is the concept. Some of you are probably looking to get raw data or something that is, in the shape of downloadable data sets that you are unable to discover if you just run file type with the PDFs. Or PDF is not the only file format that contains those data sets. Generally, we ignore it or we don't pay attention because we are not using the right file type. Like if I use XLS, for instance, and I'm looking for census data, even raw data or kind of data sheets which are not particularly difficult to copy that data from, or they're easily transferable data sets. I would rather be using XLS than instead of the PDF. It's just an advice. Like if you want something that is easily transferable and more data that is available, you can find a lot of XLS sheets, which to your surprise, you will discover also, you will get a lot hands-on to a lot of good information only because you use XLS. Doc file, normally, academics or people or students, they should be running .doc or docx because sometimes they need essays that people just upload and leave them, or somehow they're in their personal websites but they're doc format. That can be discovered easily if you do. So you have to know, based on the type of information you're searching for, you can make a better selection, and with a better judgment of what file types to use, you can discover more and better information. That's just to give you a sense of what other file formats could be helpful. The codes, another thing is the codings. Some of the raw codes that are very useful, it's going to help a lot of people who do programming. They use .txt to capture the codes normally written in the txt or notepad files. Those are discoverable also if you do file type :txt. A lot of notepad files with the codes are discovered, which otherwise, if you only do PDFs, you may not find them. Then what else is there? PowerPoints, that PowerPoint specifically, you could also find those that otherwise are not easy to get because you have not specified the file format. So if you're just doing a generic search, just using keywords, and even if you write PowerPoint or PPT, it's not going to be as effective and not as focused. So if you you can use file type with the colon and the PPTs. What if you, okay, let's do one example that uses a minus sign, then I will get to what I was thinking, and where you need to look for two different file types in the same search query. How would you be able to do that, or can you even do that or not? That could be very useful if you learn to look for you say PDFs or XLS at the same time, PowerPoint, XLS docs at the same time, or all different file format to run in the same search query. How to build that query. We'll do that as well. So minus sign is something that is going to work very effectively if you want to apply it in queries like this one. For instance, in 4, you could see that it says California stroke deaths 2015 statistics, all keywords apparently not enclosed within quotes. It doesn't even matter. The important part is that suppose if you just want to discover XLS files and you don't want any PDFs to appear in your results, you could simply just put a minus sign right next to file type colon and PDF. So the entire restraint of a file type that is specific to PDF can be eliminated from being returned, and only XLS will be found. On the other hand, logically, if you only want XLS file, and even if you don't mention PDFs, it would be restricting results to XLS anyway. So basically, there is no use for putting file type with the minuses. However, it's just to show you if minus file type is going to work or not, and um, the effect of minus sign is that it is going to not bring certain type of file formats. I'm going to also let me run these queries. Yeah, and the next thing in query 5, you see that I have asked to search for XLS file formats and doc file formats for this type of information on California stroke deaths 2015. Will this query work? Can I get only XLS and doc files at the same time? See here, I'm not looking for any other formats besides XLS and doc. But when I use file type, 2 instances of file type in the same query, it's not going to bring any results. And there is a reason for it, which I'm going to explain. First, let's run this query. Zero results, didn't work. So whenever you get a message like this, and it's not even telling you how to improve it, or where it brings certain suggestions occasionally, when there are error messages, or if the query is totally incorrect, this is the outcome. However, if the query is workable and search engine can suggest some of the ways in which you can improve it, especially where the quotations could be a restraint, and still you would find certain results coming or a small quantity of results showing, that only means that it is not an incorrect way of writing a query. It's just that you have to improve on it. But when you get a message like this, and this guy is fishing in the, this means that it is an incorrect way of writing the query. That's going to tell you this. Now, how am I supposed to make it work? Where is the restraint? What is it that's going to open it up? The message it's bringing is that even though these wordings are correct, and obviously there is tons of pages on this information, except that when I use 2 instances of it, where XLS and doc is restricted, it's not doing anything. Yet there is a way to make it work. First, why it is not working is because file type is an absolute command when you have used it in one instance. Supposing I got rid of the second instance and I run it, I should be able to find a lot of results. But when I run it with the file type doc, it's not going to work, right? So it's because when you have two instances, it means that you are asking the search to basically restrict it not only to XLS, but also to doc. So you're asking restrictions in two ways, literally negating each other's effect, where one definitive instruction says to bring XLS, while the other one is saying to bring only doc or files. So where the absolute and the absolute command is indicating that one instance of it is going to give the instruction, whereas the other set is actually contradicting the restrictor file type, it's not going to function. The only way for me to make it work is to add something here that's going to make a huge difference. Here I have used a vertical bar as if there is an or there is an option now given to the search to find either of these two, or at least find one of the two formats. So whenever I do the or, it is going to recognize it as, first of all, it's a correct query. Second is that it has got now a choice where one command is not negating the second one, or one is going to have a choice against the other. So if I run it like this, let's see what it's going to do. Here it is able to execute the command successfully. I see that I got results that is bringing XLS files. It is also bringing doc files. So I'm not missing out on information sets that are tied up to XLS or doc. Both are appearing. In what sequence one would have a precedence over the other is not as much of a. First of all, it is not a definitive algorithm that's going to prioritize when you use or simply means that find whatever is more popular and the ranking algorithm starts to kick in, where XLS can be compared with docs with reference to what type of results or what type of pages are more popular. So if XLS is most popular, it's going to have the ranking at the top. Doc was the second most popular with these wordings in it. So that's how it is going to run in the sequence of ranking, which is not predictable by us or anyone. Okay. But at least you're able to find both formats. There is one peculiar behavior of a type of file format which we'd like to use more often, and that is the PDF. How far the PDF would work when you put it as another option. Remember, there is no restriction to number of words or the file types you can put in a single search query. Having said that, we would look at when we put the PDF as another option, which means to find all three or any of the three or any combination of these three. That is where we are asking the OR to do that. Now, when we have the PDF, somehow PDF has a precedence or has somewhat a priority of appearing or bringing results compared to all other formats that you're going to run alongside the PDF format. So remember that the results invariably with the PDFs would have a precedence, meaning now the ranking algorithm is more predictable. And this is an exception and it goes to the file format of PDF only. So if I put PDF here and I run it, let's see if it's going to bring or have equal chance of doc or XLS to be brought in my SERP results. All of these are PDFs, all of them are PDFs. Even if I go to the second page, perhaps I'll find doc or XLS, but because it's not as given the same importance level. It probably is on the 10th or 20th page. It's not that it's not going to be discovered. It's just the ranking algorithms has a function which is somewhat optimized to bring the PDFs first before it would even look at doc or excels. So if we have to run the PDF as a file type with this terms, we should run them alone or separate, or not include XLS and doc, because doc and XLS will not be found. Now, these are exceptions. These are not rules. These are exceptions. There is no way for us to tell you that, somewhat or somehow PDF is mentioned by Google somewhere as something that needs to be searched separate. But based on the outcomes and based on our experience, we have even put this in the book with the examples, and you can test it out. So every single time you have other formats to work with PDFs, you will see PDF is the one that is appearing more frequently. In fact, dropping, occasionally we like to think that it drops all other operators. But supposing on the other hand, if we had XLS alongside PPT, 3 files, we can even put another format there. So let's not make it too long. Supposing these are the 3 file types, they will work very well, and any other file format except for PDF would bring results from PowerPoints, Docs, and XLS, all 3 of them. So if I run them together, I found XLS, I found PPT, I found Doc. All these are found easily. So this is where, and of course, the moment you're going to remove OR, it is going to start to contradict each other, because these are definitive commands, and with removing the OR, it's not going to function. On pages 120, 123, there's a bunch of these examples. Remember IRS 1040 with the colon sign, more examples in this. You can pretty much look at all these sample examples to then keep changing the terms, keep looking for results. And if you find something that is not according to how it's described here, you must let us know. Okay, so as far as the file type is concerned, we are done with that. We are okay. The ones that are depreciated and no longer used, one of those operators are ext with the colon sign. This is what used to work very nicely before. In fact, even while the file type colon was there, ext used to function in a sort of a slightly more flexible way, and it was very useful. I don't know why Google decided to depreciate it. The only thing that ext, first of all, it did not have a barrier as the file types would with the type of file formats it works with. So you could have even run it with PNG, JPEG, whatever else that is not included in file type. So this was more useful. You could even run it with the dot as and the extension name. So if I wrote after colon sign dot, MPEG, JPEG, .png, it would work. But right now it is not only flaky, but it is not recommended. It is depreciated. Okay. MP3, MPEG 4 files, which otherwise couldn't be found with file type, used to get discovered by ext. But as I told you, we are now using just the colon as an executable command. So in a way, we were able to find a substitute for ext. And here are the examples. You can run it on your browser. We are supposed to start with the where is it? Supposed to start with the title operators like in title, in text, and in URL. Somehow, okay, so these, in fact, I would let you know that, and I should have told you ahead of time, but today I have to cut the lecture short a little bit. I have to go somewhere. It's a very important meeting. So we will have to stop at this time with getting done with the file type. We'll be working with title, description, and URL, which is going to be the operators in title, in text, and in URL when I continue tomorrow. So sorry, but I got to go a little bit early. So let's just continue with everything that has to do with snippets. Now we're going to just work around the operators that strictly are going to get us results from the HTML text, such as title, the description or the body of text. That's where we are going to query. We'll be very specifically using these operators to target our search on content pages based on the assumption that certain information is best searched using in title. Other in-depth information should be searched with in text. Not a good choice to use in title when we are looking for long sentences, which could be incomplete sentences, search phrase that together are not discoverable, yet they exist somewhere on those pages, somewhere in the paragraphs. Deeper text we are going to use in text and not in title. And again, when we get to the in URLs, we would look for the utilization, usefulness of finding words by querying URLs, particularly inbound links and external links, how we are going to look for the domains and certain terms that make into the stem of those URLs. How they can be useful, why we query in URLs, that can be explained also. So a huge amount of information that's going to be delivered in the next few lectures. We normally use these three: snippet operators, format operators, and domain operators, along with the date range operators together to create longer and complex search queries. So these are to be understood not at the conceptual level alone, but also to learn some of the rules which makes certain advanced operators to work with alongside others in a certain way, or the behavior can be predicted only if you understand their use in combination with each other. So those rules are very important. I'll let you go early if you don't mind. I'm going to cut it short for today, but we'll catch up, I'm sure. So what else? So L is here. Excellent. Everybody is here. So hopefully I'll see you all tomorrow. Today's lecture is going to be uploaded for you to view if you want to go back to it. It'll be available tomorrow. Any questions that I can answer for you? I'd gladly do that. But could be any search query, especially use of file type. Any question you think of? I was also asked to slow down the pace at which I'm delivering the lectures. So I hope that today I have tried to go slow and explain it, in piecemeals, with with the hope that it got delivered to you, as you expected, or was it all right, the pace or the way in which we normally used to. I know that it was a faster pace before and a lot of information got delivered. So let me know if you agree with the pace at which I'm speaking. Anything that I can improve on, you're most welcome to give your input. So if you'd like, you can send me an email also, not necessary to discuss it in the class, if you feel like it. Important thing is the pace at which or the speed of my delivering the lecture has to be fine-tuned. Right? All right, so when I meet you next tomorrow, we'll continue. Have a great evening, and I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully all of you. Over and out. See you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for attending.
Bye.
See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.